Revealed, sinister creatures exposed by Chilean military haunted NASA's custody since 2000. Claire Thompson felt the chill run down her spine as she stared at the glowing screen. The grainy footage showed shadows darting between dark trees, eerie sounds echoing through the night. Her exhaustion melted away, replaced by a primal fear as she read the message: sinister creatures, seen by military personnel, had languished in NASA's custody for years. Energy crackled in the air like a warning. Could this really be true? In the serene Los Angeles suburb where she lived, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Neighbors waved from their porches, children rode bikes in laughter, and Claire found solace amid her long shifts as a nurse. But that normalcy began to warp. Across the hall, her son Ethan's drawings morphed from friendly dinosaurs and superheroes into shadowy figures that haunted their yard, a menacing silhouette peering through the curtains. She brushed it aside, too tired to worry, but the nagging anxiety was becoming suffocating. Days melted into nights filled with late homework sessions and bracing caffeine. Each morning she would watch Ethan rush to the window, eyes wide, murmuring about whispers in the dark. A shiver raced down her spine. Was it just her imagination, or had he truly begun talking to things she couldn't see? When she heard about Mr. Foster's disappearance, an unsettled feeling coiled tightly around her heart. The neighborhood's spirited science teacher, he was a staple of community gatherings. He had been complaining about the deformities of the night sky, screaming about lights and creatures too close to humanity. Was his disappearance linked to the things Ethan saw? A sense of foreboding penetrated Claire's daily routine. One cold night, shadows flickered outside like ghosts. Sweat dampened her palms as she peered out the window, her heart racing. Was she losing her mind? She could have sworn she saw dark figures melt into the hedges. Every cryptic text on her phone sent her anxiety spiraling. They are here, Claire, you must leave. But who sent them? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The walls felt like they were closing in, but the PDA dismissed her concerns as frantic imaginings, a mother overreacting. Claire's trust shattered, and what she knew of their once friendly suburb cracked, revealing glimmers of darkness beneath. The shadow Ethan had drawn now seemed to have a pulse, manifesting outside their window just as she decided to dig deeper into what her neighbors were hiding. She pieced together frantic conversations, the odd looks exchanged at backyard barbecues that now felt like shrouded secrets. The scream of silence amplified when Mr. Foster returned, his eyes vacant and a grin twisted with something other than human emotion. Standing at Claire's door, he looked eerily familiar yet entirely alien, leaving her gasping for breath. Was he one of them now? With each moment, reality warped, turning her little world into a living nightmare. The tight-knit safety of suburbia beckoned an ugly truth. Could it be that what lurked outside was the least of her concerns? As Claire braced herself, her voice trembled with dread. What have you brought home, Mr. Foster? She stumbled back, trapped between the familiar and the unknown, as fate intertwined their lives in a terrifying dance of deception. Claire felt the air shift, a slow, creeping unease that tightened the knot in her stomach. Mr. Foster's smile stretched, unnatural and wide, revealing rows of teeth that seemed too sharp, too white under the dim porch light. He stepped closer, the shadows behind him flickering and writhing like living things. Claire, his voice was smooth, dripping with an unearthly charm. You must understand, I've become something different. The words wrapped around her like a thick fog, smothering her breath. She backed away instinctively, her back hitting the hard frame of the door. She looked into his eyes, searching for the familiar warmth of the man she once spoke with on school pickup days, and found nothing but hollow sockets, as if the core of him had been snuffed out. There was a rustling behind him, a shuffle that sent her heart racing. The air thickened. Ethan, she whispered, her voice barely audible. She couldn't let anything happen to her son. She shot a wild glance toward the living room, where the night cloaked every corner with malevolence. "Don't worry about him," Foster said, a mocking lilt in his voice. "He knows more than you think. We all do." The laughter that escaped his lips sounded foreign, piercing her mind like needles. No, she took another step back, desperate to escape the doorway, to flee from the unrecognizable being before her. "You're not Mr. Foster." "Perhaps I'm not," he said, tilting his head slightly, shadows dancing across his face. "But I am the truth you sought. The truth that enshrouds your neighborhood. The truth that slumbers just beyond the veil of familiarity." Every instinct screamed at her to run, but her feet felt rooted to the floor. She searched for a sign of the man she trusted, the teacher who encouraged her son, and found only this nightmarish echo. A shudder flooded through her, and she turned abruptly, flinging the door open wide and sprinting down the hall, her heart pounding in her chest. She kicked open Ethan's bedroom door, breathless, scanning the room. Thrown toys and scattered drawings painted a chaotic picture of her son's mind, but he wasn't there. Panic flared. "Ethan!" She cried, searching under the bed and in the closet, but he was nowhere. A chill traveled up her spine. It was as if the house itself was whispering secrets, luring her deeper into its sinister hold. Out of the corner of her eye, she caught movement at the window. The dark silhouette moved slower this time, too deliberate, drawing closer. It was no longer just a shadow, it twisted, transforming into an entity. A creature that fulfilled Ethan's drawings. Breathless, Claire rushed to the window. She forced herself to look. They were gathered, their figures half in the shadows and half in the night, eyes gleaming with a hunger that sent a wave of icy dread through her. "Mom!" Ethan's voice, small and sweet, broke through the fearful atmosphere. He appeared beside her, looking small against the weight of terror gathering outside. "They wanted me to come, too." "No. No, Ethan." Claire swept him into her arms, a wave of desperation crashing over her. "They're not what they seem. We have to leave." But as she turned to flee, she noticed Mr. Foster's figure looming just outside the door, waiting, still smiling. It was no longer a choice of simply running, it was a fight against the yearning that demanded her compliance. With trembling legs, Claire put her son down, gazing between the lingering figures outside and the twisted positivity of Mr. Foster's grin. The night felt alive, synchronized with her dread. She realized that some truths could never be unlearned, and the cost of knowing could be catastrophic. "What do you want?" Claire shouted, the timbre of her voice quaking with fear yet tinged with resolute defiance. The shadows giggled, resonating with an otherworldly echo. "All they want, Claire," Mr. Foster said, stepping closer, "is what we cannot save." As the words hung in the air, another figure stirred behind him, gliding through the shadows with unsettling grace. Claire's heart stopped. This creature was different, exuding an aura that chilled her to the bone. And in that moment, as a heavy silence descended, the flicker of impending doom enveloped them all. What waited on the other side of those shadows? The thought coiled tightly around her mind, leaving her with a chilling question: where do you run when your own home has become the heart of darkness? The shadows shuddered and swelled, writhing like a cascade of dark serpents. Claire's instincts surged. Fight or flight was battling inside her like two wild beasts. She tightened her grip on Ethan, feeling his small body tremble against her. "Stay close," she snapped, her heart thrumming against her ribcage. Mr. Foster's smile faded, replaced by an expression that conveyed both longing and sinister promise. "You can't hide, Claire. You can't protect him from the truth." With a swift motion, the air in the room chilled, the curtains fluttered, and pockets of shadow seemed to stretch towards them, like hungry hands trying to grab hold. She felt dizzy with fear. "Mom, what if I want to go?" Ethan said softly, his voice barely breaking through the horror that enveloped them. The innocence in his tone made her stomach drop. "No!" Claire shouted, disbelief slicing her heart. "You don't understand, they're lying. They'll take you." Her mind raced back to the warning signs, the strange murmurs she had brushed off, the odd behavior of neighbors, the whispers that flitted like ghosts through her thoughts. A predator was lurking, and now it had its eyes set on her son. She turned toward the door, determination flaring, ready to fight for their escape. But the entities outside moved closer, forming a line that blocked her only exit. Their eyes glimmered, reflecting an insatiable hunger. The air crackled as they whispered, voices intertwining in a sickening symphony that seemed to penetrate her very soul. "You're already part of this dark tapestry, dear Claire," Mr. Foster sang, advancing further, each step resonating with a chilling finality. "You've tasted the secrets. You know. You cannot unknow." Suddenly, one of the shadow figures stepped forward, a creature of nightmares, elongated limbs, and a visage that swirled with hazy simplicity yet grotesque promise. Its mouth opened wide, revealing an abyss that threatened to swallow everything. "Mom!" Ethan cried, tugging at her. "Look!" Claire's gaze darted back to her son. Ethan stood transfixed, staring at the figure, an odd glimmer of fascination lighting his eyes. "It wants to talk." "Ethan, no!" she yelled, despair surging through her. Her mind screamed for a plan, but all she could hear was the chorus of shadows chanting her name. The figures began to hum a low, resonant sound that felt like it was slipping under her skin. It pulsed in her ears like a heartbeat, threatening to drown out rational thought. The creature leaned closer, breath reeking of musty decay, and whispered, "Join us." Something deep within Claire crackled, a flicker of defiance. "Never." Then she turned. In one breathless moment, she grabbed Ethan's hand and bolted toward the back door, the only other exit in the house. The shadows shifted to intercept them, but a flicker of light broke through the corner window, a sliver of hope. "Run!" Claire shouted. They darted past the grasping shadows as they lunged, fingers clawing for them. Claire's breath burned in her chest as they reached the door. But the handle was cold, refusing to budge. Behind them, Mr. Foster's laughter resonated, a deep echo that promised despair. "Let us in, Claire," he coaxed. "It's what you've been waiting for. What you've craved. Don't turn back." Claire felt an overwhelming resistance. It was her home. It should not be a trap. But as she pushed with all her might, the door remained sealed, drawing their fate closer with each failed attempt. The melody of shadows grew louder, drowning out her pleas. They were slipping through, seeping into her mind, pooling into a dark corner of her heart. Will they make it out? Or is the darkness claiming them both? Breathless and wild-eyed, Claire met her son's unsure gaze. A terrible decision loomed before her. Could they confront this darkness together, or would they surrender to it? As the echoes of sinister laughter surrounded them, she felt the walls closing in. The air thickened, and shadows blurred the line of reality. Charging forward, she whispered, "Ethan, trust me." But doubt gnawed at her. What would they find on the other side? Would the light be salvation or another layer of darkness? With hearts racing and hope wavering, they flung themselves toward the looming shadows. What awaited them in that abyss? What remained outside their fragile sanctuary? The question clawed at her throat as they dove deeper into the unknown. The moment they burst into the darkness, the initial cold swallowed them whole. It felt like diving into frigid water, a shock that stole the breath from Claire's lungs. Shadows spiraled around her, thick and oppressive, wrapping her in a suffocating embrace. But the flicker of light from the window vanished, and in its place, an abyss loomed, a vast, impenetrable void that stretched endlessly before them. "Mom!" Ethan's voice pierced through the panic. She could barely see, but she felt his small hand in hers, shaking. "Where are we?" I don't know." Claire's throat tightened as the words left her lips. The shadows coiled tighter around them, and she could hear the laughter again, echoing like a distant memory that refused to fade. "Come play, dear Claire," Mr. Foster's voice crept in, curling around her mind like smoke. "We've missed you." Ignoring the voice that tugged at her sanity, Claire focused on the weight of Ethan's hand. We need to keep moving. She turned, pulling him deeper into the darkness. But with every step, the shadows seemed to pulse, flicking out like predatory tongues. Were they following? Were they alive? There was a shift in the air, a whisper of movement behind them. Claire felt a chill creep down her spine. Run, she urged, pushing Ethan ahead. The darkness thickened, wrapping around them like a shroud, but they couldn't stop. If they did, something would come for them. The ground trembled as they raced forward. Echoing footsteps, a symphony of chaos, began to match their rhythm, looming closer and closer. A sickening dread coiled within her, twisting tighter. She glanced back just once, fear clawing at her heart. Figures materialized in the shadows, their grotesque forms shifting, faces barely recognizable as human, all hunger, all threat. Mom! Ethan cried. He tripped, and for a moment, time stretched as Claire's heart stopped. She turned, snatching him up before he could fall. Don't look back, she rasped, fear hardening her voice like steel. But it was too late. The shadows stretched forward, forming hands that reached endlessly for them. Claire could feel the weight of eyes boring into her, a chorus of breathless whispers crawling beneath her skin. Join us, they hissed, each voice blending into a maddening blend of temptation. You want the truth. You crave it. No. She shouted, clutching Ethan tighter. We want to go home. In response, a ripple of sound echoed through the darkness, a haunting, discordant melody that twisted Claire's insides with dread. She pressed forward, but her senses screamed that the sinister entities were drawing nearer. Each heartbeat felt like a countdown, a reminder that time was slipping. Would they escape? Or were they just reliving a nightmare, spiraling deeper into madness? The ground beneath them pulsated, a throbbing heartbeat of the abyss itself. With every step, Claire felt a tugging at her resolve. What were these creatures? Who was Mr. Foster, truly? They were questions that demanded answers, questions that threatened to unravel her sanity. Then abruptly, light flickered ahead, a promise cutting through the encroaching darkness like a knife. Claire surged forward, dragging Ethan with her. The shadows clung, but their grip faltered against the brightness. Mom! What if we can't break through? Ethan whimpered, the fear in his voice melting into desperation. We have to try. Claire responded, her heart racing, but she felt a flicker of doubt. What if this was a trap? What if the light held its own terrors? Yet the shadows were closing in, hungry and ruthless. Breathless, they plunged towards the light, uncertainty building a wall between courage and absolute surrender. What would they find on the other side? Was the light a route to freedom or another cruel deception? As they thrust forward, that question seared into Claire's mind, compelling her to bare her soul to the abyss that surrounded them. Would she emerge victorious, or would they be devoured by the darkness? The small glimmer pulled at her, its warmth inviting. All that mattered lay ahead, but the shadows pressed on. Would their fear hold them back, or drive them into the unknown? The moment they broke through the thin barrier of light, a sharp gasp of air filled Claire's lungs like a burst of life, but the relief was fleeting. The brightness enveloped them, yet it felt wrong, too bright, too harsh. Shadows writhed at the edges, taunting them, still hungry, still powerful. Mom! Ethan clung to her tightly as the world solidified around them. They emerged into a dim, cluttered room filled with old furniture shrouded in dust. The walls were covered in faded, peeling wallpaper, and the air was thick with the smell of decay. It felt more like a crypt than a sanctuary. What was this place? Claire scanned for exits while a sense of dread began to creep back in. The laughter of the shadows lingered in her ears, and she fought to suppress the trembling in her hands. We don't have time to. Suddenly, the door to their side slammed shut, isolating them within this mausoleum of memories. Panic clawed at her throat, tightening like a vice. Ethan, stay close, she hissed, pulling him back toward the far wall. Then came a noise, soft at first, the creak of floorboards, a whisper of movement. Claire's heart raced as she strained to listen. It sounded like faint voices, murmurs intermingling into a sadistic song, blending into one another. "Come join us, be part of the family, dear Claire," Mr. Foster's voice echoed, now painfully close but warped and distorted. "Shut up!" she yelled, her voice rising in pitch. "We're not afraid of you." The shadows grew thicker, slinking along the floor, writhing in the corners of her vision. Something rustled behind the furniture, something alive. She turned sharply, her breath hitching as a figure emerged from behind an old, tattered chair, a girl, her features obscured in darkness, but there was something eerily familiar about her. "Is it you?" Claire whispered, dread surging through her veins. "Are you part of this?" As the girl stepped closer, the shadows recoiled, twisting and writhing as if trying to escape her. "It's okay," she said, her voice soft yet filled with a haunting echo. "They won't hurt you if you listen." Ethan stepped back, clinging to Claire's leg. She felt his tiny frame tremble. "Mom, who is she?" "I don't know, sweetheart," Claire replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "But we need to be careful." The girl pointed to the door behind them. "They're coming. You must leave this place before it's too late. It's a cycle, a trap. You have to break it." "Break what?" Claire's mind raced, trying to grasp what the girl was saying. "Feed into the light," the girl replied, her eyes glimmering with an unreadable emotion. "But beware, if it finds you wanting." The shadows swelled, stretching toward them like dark vines. Claire felt a rush of dread. "What if we don't want to?" Then the girl began, but her words were lost in a cacophony of whispers, the air thickening with a tangible sense of fear. "Mom!" Ethan screamed, pulling at her as the shadows surged, their laughter transforming into a terrifying roar. The walls around them seemed to close in, and the very foundation shook with their fury. "Ethan, we have to keep moving," Claire shouted, wrenching herself away from the girl who had now veered back into the darkness. They charged toward the door, hearts pounding like war drums, but when they reached for the handle, an unseen force held it firm, as if the very house was alive, intent on preventing their escape. Just then, a laugh echoed from the far side, deep, sinister. "Mr. Foster. You can't leave yet. You haven't finished your playtime." Desperation rippled through Claire. "We'll never play with you. Then you'll learn your lesson the hard way." The shadows rippled violently, coiling and stretching toward her in a twisting dance, each movement predatory, hungry. Claire's chest tightened, fear twisting her stomach into knots. "Mom! What do we do?" She glanced at her son, his eyes wide with terror and determination. The girl's words echoed in her mind, a sliver of hope. "We fight back, Ethan. Together." As she gathered her resolve, Claire couldn't shake the shadow of doubt clinging to her. Was this all part of their fate? Or was there a way to escape the cycle of darkness? With one resolute pull, she grasped the doorknob tightly, determination flooding her veins. They had to find a way out whatever it took, but as they turned, a rumble erupted from the shadows, as another voice, heavier and more commanding than before, rose above the chaos. "You think you can escape? You are mine now." Claire and Ethan stood frozen, terror flooding their senses as reality twisted under their feet. Their salvation or doom lay just beyond the door, but at what cost? Would they find the strength to break free, or were they forever bound to the shadows? The shadows recoiled momentarily, as if recoiling from the very idea of confrontation, giving Claire and Ethan a fleeting glimmer of hope. But it was deception, for the laughter surged back, louder and more menacing, reverberating through the room like a thunderstorm. "Mine now," it echoed again, a heavy thrum that reverberated in Claire's bones. She felt Ethan's grip tighten, his nails digging into her thigh, fearing that she might slip away. "Mom!" Ethan shouted, wide-eyed, desperately scanning the walls for cracks of light, for anything that hinted at escape. "We have to go." "Yes," Claire replied, her heart pounding fiercely against her ribcage. "But I need you to hold my hand and be brave." Ethan nodded, though every ounce of his small body shook with fear. She reclaimed what precious moments she had and turned back to face the room and its shifting darkness. The girl who had warned them stood in the corner, her form barely discernible in the gloom, but Claire felt she was no longer the same, the malignant essence of the place seeping into her. "Listen," the girl implored, her voice momentarily breaking through the din. "You need to stand together. It's the only way." But before Claire could respond, the door quaked around its frame, rattling with a thunderous pulse. She could almost hear the beast behind it, waiting, feasting on their anxiety. A voice slithered from that darkness, deeper and more guttural, drowning out all else. "You really think you can fight? You have no idea what you're up against. Let us go." Claire shouted, the fight in her rising to a fever pitch. The shadows flickered as if they recoiled from her fiery defiance, a feeble act against a gathering storm. "Don't!" the girl cried out, her voice shifting to a whisper as she conjured the weight of her warning. "You only feed it." Fear swelled inside Claire, but she couldn't let it control her. She turned to Ethan, his face pale, mirroring the terror clawing at her insides. "Close your eyes and hold my hand. On the count of 3, we're charging for that door." Ethan nodded, tears shimmering in his eyes. 1, 2 she counted down, willing every ounce of her strength into the moment. 3. They lunged forward together, yanking at the handle. But the door remained unyielding. An invisible force pressed back, slamming into them. Claire felt the air whoosh from her lungs as they were thrown to the floor, shadows laughing around them as the girl began to flicker like a dying light. "Mom!" Ethan shrieked, pulling at her shirt, and Claire felt the frantic desperation surge inside her. She knew they had to break free, otherwise the shadows would draw them into eternal night. With renewed fury, Claire scrambled to her feet, ignoring the creeping sensation that threatened to paralyze her. "We will not be trapped." The shadows shrieked in response, pouring over her like a thick, suffocating mist. The air hummed with dark energy, pressing against her skin in a claustrophobic embrace. Claire pushed towards the door again, sunken in its inexplicable hold. "Claire!" The girl's fleeting voice echoed from the void, but it was too late, the shadows engulfed her entirely. Claire couldn't think about that now. All that mattered was escape. In that moment of ferocious clarity, a thought struck her, the light. What if the very thing that terrified them was also their ally? She thrust her will toward the largely light-filled room, steadying herself against the overwhelming pressure closing in. "Let us go where the shadows can't reach," she shouted, pulling Ethan towards the girl's last lingering flickers. The cacophony crashed over them, the sound of chains and cries. Shadows lashed against them like the devil's tail, and just as hope began to slip from her fingers, Claire caught the glint of brightness creeping in from the edges of their world. "Now!" she roared as they leaped toward the bright barrier, determination electrifying her movements. But as the light wrapped around them, an ominous rumble erupted. "You think you can escape my grasp? I'll hunt you down." The squeezing intensity of the room twisted and churned, until something in Claire snapped. As they reached the threshold, a blinding flash illuminated the shadows for an agonizing second, revealing grotesque figures with elongated limbs and hollow eyes, mouths stretched in sinister grins, mocking their futile struggle. Then darkness fell as they barreled through the threshold, but it turned cool, numbing as if dipped in ice. They stumbled into a darkened hallway that twisted inexplicably, the air thick and charged. Where are we?" Ethan's voice broke through the suffocating silence. The answer hovered just beyond reach, a lingering dread that sat heavily on Claire's chest. The walls whispered her name in grotesque tones, and the way forward felt uncertain. Ethan were not safe yet. But the unrelenting sense of dread was now insistent. They had entered another realm of terror, one that promised neither light nor refuge. What awaited them in the depths of this new nightmare? And would they ever escape the darkness that stalked them? The hallway loomed ahead, an endless stretch of cold darkness that seemed to swallow them whole. Claire could feel Ethan trembling beside her, his small hand gripping hers as if it were the only thing tethering him to reality. The walls felt alive, pulsating with a malevolence that throbbed just underneath the surface. Unseen whispers curled around them, echoing through the corridor like a taunt. "You shouldn't have come here," they hissed, a rasping glee sending shivers down Claire's spine. The air thickened, growing heavy with anxiety, and each step they took shifted the darkness around them, as if it were a living entity parsing their movements. "Don't listen to them," Claire whispered tightly to Ethan, steeling herself against the gnawing fear that threatened to break her resolve. But deep inside, she knew this was no safe haven. The shadows had followed them, they were not free. With every step, the sound of their heartbeats seemed to resonate louder, drowning out the whispers. Claire's mind raced where to go. What to do? The musty sense of damp walls and the chill of the floor seeped into her bones, making her feel hollow and vulnerable. The instinct to run surged within her, but the oppressive weight of dread grounded her feet. "Mom, what if they come for us? I don't want to stay here." Ethan's voice trembled, the cracks in his bravado widening. "They won't get us," Claire replied, her voice firm but tinged with uncertainty. She scanned the dark corridor, searching for any hint of escape, anything to provide hope. Her eyes caught fluttering shadows against the far wall, unnervingly familiar yet foreign. Suddenly, a soft glow emerged from the darkness, flickering hesitantly, as if inviting them closer. Claire hesitated. It felt wrong, too good to be true. But just as anxiety began to settle in, she felt a warmth beckoning from the glimmer. "Ethan, look!" she urged, pulling him toward the light, but before they could reach it, the shadows coalesced into a solid form. A figure rose from the depths, formless and terrifying, the outline shifting more than the shadows around it. Vague features twisted into an expression of malice, wide eyes staring at them with a horrific hunger. "More souls lost in the dark," it croaked, its voice a grating rasp that filled the hallway with an echo of despair. "No! Stay away from us!" Claire yelled. But the creature lunged forward, melding the shadows around them into a writhing mass. Ethan pressed against her, his wide eyes reflecting the sickly glow of the creature. "It wants us, Mom." His words barely made it out before a palpable darkness reached for them, taut, suffocating, almost tangible. Claire turned to flee, dragging Ethan with her. They raced down the corridor, but the walls began to close in, constricting, urging them toward the approaching evil. Beyond their sprinting footsteps, Claire could hear the creature's breathing, a deep, ragged wheeze that echoed like thunder against the walls. "Where do we go?" Ethan shouted, desperation lacing every syllable, but the hallway twisted and turned without end, an infernal labyrinth designed to trap. The whispers grew louder, urging them to turn back, to give in to the creature's call. The ground beneath them seemed to shake, and the air thickened with the scent of decay. "Keep moving!" Claire yelled through gritted teeth, her heart racing against the terror nipping at her heels. Every pulse was an affirmation of life, even as the darkness sought to snuff it out. Suddenly, there was a break in the hallway, a door, steel and imposing, cast in shadows yet slightly ajar, a glimmer of light peeking through. Claire's breath caught. "That way! Come on!" As they darted toward it, a guttural growl erupted from behind them. The creature lunged, its jaws snapping as they reached for the door. With one final surge of strength, Claire shouldered it open, propelling them both into light. The sudden brilliance blindsided them. Claire stumbled forward, gripping Ethan tightly so they wouldn't be separated. They fell, crashing into a room vibrant with light, the door slamming shut behind them, silence enveloping them almost instantly. Heart pounding, Claire looked around. But something was wrong. This place was not safe. The light, while harsh, distorted the edges of reality, bending and warping in unnatural ways. They stood in a chamber filled with towering shelves lined with jars, each one housing sinister shadows that twisted and writhed, dark forms contained yet ever threatening. "What is this place?" Ethan gasped, his innocent eyes wide with fear. Claire felt the very air pulse with tension, a sense of nameless dread creeping back in. "I don't know." Ethan panic clawed at her chest as she scanned the room, the feeling that they were not alone tightening her throat. "Mom, I hear them again," Ethan whimpered, voice shaking. The laughter returned, soft yet sharp, echoing from the jars and walls, this time carrying an edge of triumph. "You can't escape, we're always watching." She had hoped for safety, but instead, they were enshrined in a horror as old as time. Just then, the jars began to rattle, the shadows within snarling with renewed vigor. The darkness had found them again. "Run!" Claire screamed, setting off through the chamber, uncertainty and fear propelling them into the abyss of unknown. What would they unearth in this sinister archive of shadows? Would they ever know peace again, or was this only the beginning of their nightmare? They bolted forward, hearts racing, as the echo of laughter filled the room like an ominous symphony. Claire grasped Ethan's hand tightly, pulling him along as they weaved between the towering shelves. Each step felt like stepping deeper into the maw of hopelessness. "What do we do?" Ethan cried, panic punctuating his words. "Mom, please." "I don't know." She barked, feeling the hot breath of that terrible thing still whispering in her ears. The jars vibrated with rage. Shadows inside twisted, skittering against the glass as if longing to escape. Suddenly, a jar shattered. Gray glass splintered across the stone floor, and a thick, smoky darkness rushed out, forming a grotesque shape with too many eyes, churning and expanding. Claire felt time stretch, her body screamed to move, but her mind froze at the sight of the nightmare made real. "Keep running." She yanked Ethan, propelling him ahead. Their momentum was the only thing keeping the encroaching horror at bay, but the room itself felt alive, shifting. Shelves creaked and groaned under some unseen weight. As they dashed forward, each glance over her shoulder revealed more of the sinister specters pouring from the broken jars, slipping through gaping mouths, a terrifying smorgasbord of terror vying for freedom. "What do they want?" Ethan whimpered, eyes wide with terror. "To take what's ours," the disembodied whispers echoed, a chorus of pain that sent a chill through Claire. It felt as though the walls were breathing with malevolence, coaxing them towards something dreadful. Claire's gaze locked onto the far end of the room, where the light seemed the brightest, pushing through the oppressive gloom. "There. We have to get to the light." She pulled Ethan toward the brilliance, a desperate prayer on her lips. As they neared the glow, realization hit her like a wave. They weren't just escaping the shadows. They were entering their domain. The whispers intensified, more furious, more frantic, the sound rising to a deafening crescendo. "Catch them!" The shadows shrieked, a cacophony that threatened to shatter their resolve. "They are ours." The darker figure from the corridor appeared before her, its abyssal form solidifying into an outline too familiar. Claire skidded to a stop, horrified. Its mouth curled into a smile that was all teeth, while eyes smoldered with a darkness that seemed to reach into her very soul. "Come play with us," it hissed, and the malevolent laughter cascaded through the chamber, drowning everything in despair. Claire scarcely had time to think before the ground fell away beneath them. A deep fissure opened, a gaping maw of shadows threatening to swallow them whole, a portal to a nightmare. "Mom!" Ethan yelped, clutching her tighter as the floor heaved. Each heave sent tendrils of darkness reaching for them, pulling them down into the abyss. "Hold on!" Claire yelled, panic awakening instinct she didn't know she had. They leapt toward an alcove, a small hollow in the wall that shimmered with silver light, not the sickly hue they had seen before. It felt like hope, a flicker of something that might save them. They rushed into the alcove, and the shadows clawed at the edges, swirling and twisting desperately. Claire squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for what was to come. If they were going to face this horror, it might as well be with the last vestiges of hope, however fleeting. The moment they stepped inside, the world shifted again. The shadows wailed, an anguished sound that echoed through the chamber like a death knell. "You can't hide from us. You can't escape." A storm surging through the darkness, Claire opened her eyes. An expanse stretched out before them, a chilling landscape that felt strangely familiar, filled with swirling mist and flickering lights. Each breath tasted of fear and salt. "Where are we?" Ethan's voice trembled, laced with uncertainty. "I don't know," Claire answered, horror creeping into her voice. But we have to find a way out of here. As they gathered themselves, the echoes of freedom slipped away, leaving only the chilling whispers growing louder, pulling them deeper into the unknown. In that moment of stillness, a shadow flickered by, bearing an unmistakable resemblance to the faces trapped inside the jars. Hope dimmed, and dread clawed at Claire's insides, but far in the distance, a glimmer pulsed, beckoning them closer. It shimmered with an ethereal light unlike anything they'd encountered. Was it salvation or another trap? "Mom, we need to move," Ethan insisted, his voice rising with urgency. Claire's heart raced again, not just with fear, but now with a steely determination. They would fight back, no matter what it took. With one last glance back at the abyss gaping behind them, they sprinted toward the mysterious light. And as they did, the shadows surged, howling in a fury. Their screams filled the air, filled with terrifying anticipation of what was to come, what would await them in the light. Would it bring salvation or another layer of darkness? The light pulsed invitingly, illuminating a path through the swirling fog. As Claire and Ethan rushed toward it, a vivid, almost tangible fear rooted itself deeper in her chest. The shadows behind them were not just echoes of something dark, they were a living, breathing terror, relentless and hungry. "Keep moving," Claire shouted, but her voice wavered, uncertainty clawing at her insides. She could feel the chilling breath of the darkness lingering close behind, its whispers thrumming in a menacing rhythm. Ethan stumbled slightly, his small hand slipping from hers, and the moment felt like slow motion. Panic surged. She spun around, fear coiling in her throat. "Ethan!" she yelled, her heart lurching when she saw him frozen, staring at a shadow lurching toward him. "Mom!" he gasped, eyes wide, reflecting the chaos that surrounded them. Claire surged back, grabbing his hand again with enough force to pull him forward. But the darkness was fast, it swirled around her, tendrils reaching out as if wanting to drag her back into its suffocating embrace. They broke through the mist, and the blinding light engulfed them, momentarily shielding them from the shadows clawing at their heels. Claire shut her eyes against the radiance, praying it would keep them safe. "Just a little further," she gasped, urging Ethan onward. As they emerged into the light, the world shifted again, colors swirling, then settling into a new reality. They stood in a vast, surreal landscape, dotted with bizarre shapes jutting from the ground. It was like a vast expanse of dreams twisted into nightmares, an eerie blend of familiarity and grotesque strangeness. "Mom, where are we?" Ethan asked breathlessly, his earlier bravado washed away, replaced by confusion and fear. "I don't know," Claire murmured, scanning the horizon where indiscernible shapes moved with unsettling fluidity. A prickle of dread crept along her spine as she sensed eyes watching them, hidden in the shadows cast by strange, towering entities that resembled mangled sculptures. Then came the sounds, a whispering wind shrieking, echoing in her ears, each gust laced with the cries of despair. It felt as if the very air around them was alive, filled with the weight of countless tormented souls. In an instant, shadows materialized at the edge of their vision, darting between the twisted figures of the landscape. They were not just remnants, they were alive, flowing like liquid darkness, creeping closer as if eager to reclaim what they had lost. "Mom, we have to go," Ethan urged, tugging at her arm, the urgency in his voice breaking Claire from her paralysis. She turned, scanning for a path, but everything around them twisted and contorted, shifting as shadows danced mockingly. Her heart pounded, each thud resonating against the terror that threatened to swallow them whole. "What if we don't find a way out?" Ethan's voice quivered, fear spilling over every syllable. "Don't say that," Claire snapped, forcing down her own rising panic. But regardless of her words, an echo of doubt threatened to drown her resolve. Then, from the depths of the darkness, the grotesque figures began to take form, moving forward with intent. They were stretched, elongated faces she recognized, distorted and trapped, each one a testament to the hopelessness that pervaded this place. "Mom!" Ethan's voice shattered her breath as he pointed, eyes wide, filled with horror. The figures had hundreds of eyes that glimmered with malicious glee, anticipating their next move. "You can't escape us." They chanted, a mournful, wailing chorus rising above the murmurs of their despair. Claire's pulse quickened, a fight-or-flight response surging through her. "We can't give in." She gripped Ethan's hand tighter. "We must keep moving." With one last glance at the encroaching tide of faces, she spun around and ran towards the next flickering light in the distance. But as they moved, uncertainty gnawed at her. Would the light be their salvation, or was it a harbinger of worse horrors? Dark shapes lashed out, shrieking triumphantly as they followed, desperate to reclaim their lost souls. What lay ahead? Would they find a way out, or would they too become a part of this nightmare? Just as they approached the pulsing glow, Claire hesitated. Shadows swelled around them, and a chilling laughter echoed in the air. The light beckoned them, but could they trust it? Was it a path to freedom or the ultimate trap? "Mom, go!" Ethan yelled, pulling her toward the ominous glow. With every step, questions filled Claire's mind. What awaited them? What was this light truly meant to reveal? As Claire and Ethan pushed through the suffocating shadows, their hearts pounded like drums in their chests. They sprinted toward the pulsing glow, each breath filled with both dread and hope. The oppressive darkness howled behind them, a tempest of anguish and fury swirling as the creatures lunged for their escape. "Keep going, we have to break through," Claire urged, her voice rising amid the chaos. The flickering light danced teasingly ahead, drawing them closer, drawing them in. Suddenly, the path narrowed, and icy hands of shadows reached out, clawing at their ankles, fastening like chains. "You cannot leave." A chorus of distorted voices echoed, each word dripping with venomous delight. "Mom!" Ethan's voice cracked with fear. I can't breathe." Claire felt an upward surge of panic, but in that moment, defiance ignited within her. "No," she roared, shaking off the tendrils of darkness. "We will not be swallowed." With all her strength, she lunged forward. "Together!" she shouted, gripping Ethan's hand with fierce determination. With one final surge, they broke free from the shadow's grasp, bursting into the radiant light. Time seemed to hold its breath as they stumbled into an otherworldly landscape, vibrant and surreal. Clouds floated like cotton candy, illuminating their surroundings in soft hues of pink and gold. Ethan gasped in awe, eyes wide with wonder. Is this real?" he whispered, cautiously touching the shimmering flowers blooming around them. The melody of darkness had faded, replaced by melodic laughter that now danced on the breeze. Claire felt weariness retreat as if life itself breathed back into her bones. The shadows retreated at the edge of the light, hissing and twisting, unable to breach this sanctuary. "What is this place?" Claire asked breathlessly, looking around. There were paths lined with sparkling streams and trees that shimmered with ethereal light. "You've come far, dear Claire," a voice floated through the air, crystalline and warm. Claire turned to see a figure stepping forward, emanating an aura of comfort. It was the girl from before, her form now radiant and serene. "Welcome to the realm of truth. Here lies your freedom." "Freedom?" Claire echoed. "Is this real?" "It is as real as the fear you overcame. You pushed through the darkness, you fought for the light." The girl's eyes sparkled. "You chose courage. That choice brought you to this haven." Ethan squeezed her hand, grounding her. "Will the shadows come here?" "No, sweet child. The light protects. They cannot pass beyond." A smile stretched across the girl's face, illuminating her delicate features. "But remember, even in light, shadows linger. They wait, ever patient, whispering temptations of doubt." Claire felt a weight lift. "So, this is our peace." "For now," the girl replied gently. "Your journey is not over. There will be darkness again, but know that fear is not your enemy. Embrace it, let it guide you, and you will find your way." Sensing a stirring within, Claire took a deep breath, drawing strength from the beauty surrounding her. "We can face anything, right Ethan?" Ethan straightened, a new bravado shining in his eyes. Yeah. Together. The girl nodded approvingly. Always together. And remember, in the darkest moments, you carry the light within you. With a deep sense of understanding, Claire felt a flicker of hope igniting a flame in her chest. They had escaped. They had fought for their lives against insurmountable odds and found a glimmer of purity in a chaotic world. We have to go back, don't we? Claire admitted slowly, dread mingling with determination. We need to help others. The girl's expression shifted, understanding the weight of Claire's heart. It is a noble journey you choose, but remember, don't lose sight of your own light. For every soul you touch, you risk the shadows reaching for you again. I'm willing, Claire replied fiercely. For Ethan, for others. It's the only way. With that resolution clinging tightly to her, the landscape around them began to shimmer and swirl again. The light grew brighter, and together they took a step forward, ready to march back out into the world, confident that love could conquer fear. Let us go, Ethan. With determination, Claire and Ethan walked toward an unseen horizon, ready to illuminate the shadowy corners of their reality and bring light where darkness had thrived. As they stepped into their new reality, they knew they would always carry the light within, and the fight against the shadows would continue. But they would face it, their love shining as a beacon. Now, this is your moment. You need to subscribe now to make sure you don't miss incredible stories like this one. Smash that like button now to help us feed the algorithm and let everyone in on this journey. Flood the comments below with your reactions and theories about Claire and Ethan's journey and what comes next, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to witness the power of light over darkness. Your support does make a difference. Let us spread the light together.